Look, it's a chance for your future customer to know and like your company without realizing why they even did it.
Welcome back to the Talking Sales series, and I have Mike Adams with me again. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, John.
Hey, last time we talked about the story structure, and prior to that we talked about the fact that across the 7 stories that you need to tell as a salesperson, the very first story you actually gave an example, which is your own personal story.
Yes.
And you mentioned the other 2, key person story and company story.
Yes.
I'd like to talk more about company story. How do you structure a company story? Why do you tell a company story? And maybe you can give me some examples.
Yeah, I will give an example and I'll then explain what's in that story. One of the first times that I noticed in my selling career that stories did work for me, that they had an impact beyond what I'd expected, was when I was working in Russia in the early 2000s. So I was responsible for all of the sales in the former Soviet Union countries out of Moscow.
What were you selling then?
Software to oil and gas companies.
Software to oil and gas, okay.
And I heard a story early in my time about Schlumberger, the company I was working with in Russia. And Schlumberger is originally French multinational company, founded in the late 1920s, 1929, by 2 French brothers. They invented a technique for measuring the resistivity down an oil well. And it turns out that oil has a high resistivity and water has a low resistivity. So most times when you drill a hole in the ground, you find water. And if you find oil, it's a high resistivity. So they invented a technique that said, this is where the oil is. And that is a multi-$100 billion invention that made a massive company. Schlumberger is a revenue of around 30 billion per annum. But when they needed to sell that product, not many countries understood it, but one place was the Soviet Union. And their early success was in the Soviet Union in the 1930s. And then they had an absolute calamity. They were nationalized by Stalin. All the equipment was taken and they were thrown out of the country. And when Russia, what was then became Russia, opened up to Western companies in the 1980s to 1990s, Schlumberger had to make a decision. Do we go back into Russia again and risk everything? And they did a business case, took it to the CEO, and the question to the CEO was, how much money are you willing to risk to go back into Russia? And the answer was 200 million US. And so they picked 2 recently privatized Russian oil companies, put a lot of expertise into those companies, and doubled their production inside 18 months, which is a phenomenal result.
Wow.
Doubled their oil production.
Yep.
So I used to tell that story. I heard it and I thought, what a cool story. And it is a cool story. And then I started hearing other clients telling me that story.
The same story.
The same story. I started to hear it coming back. And I went, oh, this is a story that's being repeated. And it has within it the elements that you look for a company story. And they are, all right, when was your company founded and who and why? That's kind of basic, a setting. That's the normal start to a story. But what are the ups and downs and the things that went wrong? And because most companies fail. So why didn't your company fail? Did you have one really good first client, or what was it? If you can tell that story, it's an engaging narrative. And inside my story is, Schlumberger is going to make you rich. These guys double your oil production. I didn't even have to say that.
No.
I didn't have to say anything about the company that was bragging about the company. I just passed the message with the story. And that's why every salesperson needs to be able to tell their company story. Otherwise, they sound like all their competitors, because if you think about it, your company story is unique, but the facts and assertions, everyone says the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not engaging at all.
Those assertions I hate, yeah.
We're number one, we're in 10 capital cities, and yes.
All that sort of absolute crap that everybody turns off straight away.
Yes.
Okay, so the company story, you've really convinced me it's vital.
It's vital.
Every company needs to have their stories and have all their people understanding the story, understanding how it should be told, that structure we talked about in the last discussion,
yes.
And making sure it's a well-structured, well-told story. And I can see the value flowing out of that.
Look, it's a chance for your future customer to know and like your company without realizing why they even did it. They just happen to now like your company because they know the story.
So the challenge to everybody out there is know your company story, and if the company hasn't thought about their story, this is a goldmine. Get your story, get it down, understand how to put it together, and have all your people know that story and put it out. And one of the things I think we should talk about in one of our future discussions is a company having a story library, and that'll be just one of the very good stories in a story library.
It's the first story of the company story library, is the company story. The CEO should give it. The CEO should tell the story in a 2 or 3 minute video, and every new person to the company should listen to it.
Great suggestion. So there you go. There's some opportunities to really think about that. Hopefully this created a lot of value in your mind, whether you're a salesperson, sales leader, or the CEO of a company. I really thank you for hanging in here, and hopefully you got the value. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, John.